My name is Arthur Delaney, but everyone called me Art. I was 62, a widower, a former history teacher at Wando High School, and I lived in a narrow wooden house on Hibbins Street in the old village of Mount Pleasant, across the bridge from Charleston, South Carolina. On my porch sat 2 rocking chairs that creaked like tired crickets, a ship's bell I'd screwed into an oak bracket myself, and that perennial briny smell that drifted up from Shem Creek whenever the tide turned. I've always been a man of files and memory, diplomas in frames, letters from students, receipts stapled by month, and the last thing my wife, Marion, wrote by hand before the cancer took her. Don't give up your place at the table, Art. Family learns by example. That morning started clear as freshly washed glass. I woke a little after 6 to liquid light slipping through the screen. I made coffee in a Chemex I'd gotten from an old colleague, Tom, and watered the basil that insisted on surviving, even in that heat that polishes asphalt and salts your forehead. Deep down, though I wouldn't admit it, I was waiting on an invitation that never came. My son, Ryan, 32, and his wife, Brooklyn, 29, were throwing a gender reveal at Pitt Street Bridge Park. A very Pinterest picnic, she'd said at Christmas, eyes full of ideas. I'm not a confetti man, but I am a show-up man. The invitation never arrived. Around 8, my phone buzzed with a message from my niece Tessa on Instagram. "Uncle, are you going today? It's going to be gorgeous." I answered with what my hands could manage, steady and short. Wasn't invited. Her typing bubbles flashed, disappeared, came back, vanished. A few minutes later, a story popped up in my feed. A drone sweeping over the Pitt Street Bridge, tables with striped cloths, balloons in sandy tones, an "Oh Baby" sign, and my son, linen shirt, sunglasses, cracking a joke into a little lapel mic. "Folks, party without drama, okay? No old man speeches today." And someone off camera laughed loud. I knew the voice. It was him, laughing at his own line, and everybody laughed along. The coffee soured on the spot. Not because of the party. Because of the message. No old man speeches. Last Thanksgiving, he'd already made a joke. "Dad, you turn every toast into a lecture." And the family laughed. Laughter is the oil of families, I know. But there's laughter that glosses over, and laughter that rusts. That one rusted. And when it rusts, it bites from the inside. I didn't write in the family group. I didn't call. I went down the hall, opened the tall closet, and pulled down the box where I keep what I call hard sweets. Papers that bring peace and sting at the same time. On top, the will Marion and I signed back in 2009 in blue ink. In the middle, the changes from 2016, when she was already sick. And underneath, a draft my lawyer, Caroline Rhodes on Broad Street, had emailed me about 3 weeks earlier. A revocable trust, the Marion and Art Delaney Living Trust, with a plain-spoken clause, a no-contest clause. I'd hesitated to sign. It felt too harsh. I figured time and a conversation at Maple Street Biscuit Company would straighten Ryan out. But the words, "no old man speeches," pushed me off the porch and into the car. I drove my old Buick Enclave down Coleman Boulevard with the AC blasting cold, and my hands steady like it was exam day. The Ben Sawyer Bridge gleamed white, and pelicans drifted over the channel like lazy little airplanes. I parked on Broad, older than my patience, and went up to Caroline's office. The smell of books and jasmine tea perfume from the air conditioning greeted me along with her. Hair in a bun that never fell, voice firm, like someone who's seen every version of an argument. "Mr. Delaney," she said, offering her hand. Today, they're going to pop a smoke cannon and say boy or girl. I want to pop something else. Illusion." She set a Mont Blanc pen on the paper like placing a scalpel on a tray. We already had everything lined up. All we needed was your go. I gave it, and when I did, I surprised myself with how calm I was. Caroline read each paragraph the way I like. Slow, no jargon. The Hibbins Street house into the trust with my lifetime use. 60% of the net estate to Elise, my daughter, 38, a nurse at MUSC, the one who shows up at 2 in the morning when my back decides to seize. 30% to a 529 college plan for the grandbaby on the way. No name yet. With simple rules. Money only for education, and Caroline herself as trustee until the grandchild turns 25. 10% to the IZ, Geraldton Teachers Promise, a fund that helps retired teachers with rent because of Gary, my friend who ended up selling his boat to pay for meds. And that clause, if any heir contests the will, they forfeit their share. It wasn't revenge, it was a break. "And Ryan?" she asked. No judgment, just the question. Ryan gets 0% outright, not from lack of love. The opposite, because love needs an edge. He'll have his father's love and the time to understand. And if he wants to show up for his own child, he'll do it without my wallet as a crutch. I signed the trust. I signed the new will. I signed the revocation of the power of attorney I'd, in my naivete, given Ryan the year I had prostate surgery, a paper that would have let him move money if I wasn't doing well. He never used it. But I wasn't leaving a man who calls me old man speech with both the knife and the cheese in the same drawer. "Want me to record it with the county today?" Caroline asked, one eyebrow up. "I do, and one more thing. Letters. One for each child. No venom, just facts. And a copy of the summary of trust for Ryan. He'll need to read it slow. And..." I took a breath. "A letter for Brooklyn. She's sweet, but she loves the spotlight. Make it clear my problem isn't confetti. It's the un-invite." While the assistant printed stamps and the notary set the seal, I went downstairs and over to Gaulard and Malaclay for coffee and an almond croissant. I turned on my phone. New story. Ryan holding a smoke cannon. Brooklyn smiling like she was born for the camera. An acrylic sign. He or she, come and see. Comments flying. "Gorgeous. Ah, can't wait. Where's Grandpa?" That one from Tessa again. No reply. I'm a teacher even in my anger. Hold on to that and come with me. If you've ever felt the snap of a door closing without explanation, stay. I'll tell you what I did next, and you won't believe it. Little did I know that tap of my finger would turn into an earthquake. If you want to understand why a father makes a decision that looks like pure hardness, you need to see the table where he learned to cut bread. Mine smelled of beeswax and reheated coffee. On Sundays, Marion would set a simple candle in the center, and I'd run my hand over the cotton cloth like I was palming a map. Marion wrote that note, "Don't give up your place at the table," on lined paper that still smells like a sewing drawer. She had a nurse's hands and a commander's spine. When the illness took the shine from her eyes, her voice stayed. In the old village, things are made of wood and memory. That weathered leather couch in the living room, the one that groans when you shift, held so many talks with kids and friends, I could paint a world map of the tears spilled there. The oriental rug has a wine stain only I can see. From the night Ryan came home crying from practice because he rode the bench, I sat beside him and said it wasn't the bench that defined a man. It was what he did with the want to play. He was 13, and I took him to the field early with the smell of wet grass to work on his swing. The glove stiffened in the sun. I bought that glove on a discount that still made me sweat, just under $120. It was counted out money because teachers don't swim in plenty, and I don't regret a cent. I picked Ryan up from a concert parking lot when he was 18 and had a flat. I paid for the barber course he swore was his calling, just a little over $2,800, and watched him quit halfway through. I covered 2 months of their back rent in 2021, about $1,400 one month and another 14-something the next, with interest that stung my balance. I fixed their fridge by paying for the compressor, around $300 and change, and he posted a photo, partner of the home, like it was a brand campaign. I kept quiet. I've always been good at keeping quiet when company's over. With Elise, the conversation had a different tone. She could disarm any stiffness in me with a coffee in hand and questions that mattered. When my back locked up on those mornings when muscle turns to stone, she was the one easing her car up Hibben Street, headlights skimming the Spanish moss, walking in with a coat that smelled like a hospital. "Dad, 0 to 10, how bad?" I'd lie. She'd laugh and tell me to cut the bravado. I know who woke up for me in the dark. I know who boiled washcloths and who filtered the noise. Maybe you imagine that over the years I kept a ledger of wins and faults. No. What I did was keep certain papers like you stash bitter medicine. A will doesn't come from a whim. It comes from nights thinking about who shows up with soup when you can't stand up. It comes from noticing that money, little or much, is an amplifier. It amplifies love, and it amplifies disrespect. And I didn't want to amplify what was corroding me. Between bites of croissant in Charleston, I remembered the first time Marion and I hauled our 75 Airstream, silver like a low moon, to a campsite near Edisto. The fresh water smelled like green leaves, and the radio gave us Old Soul we sang off-key. Marion christened that trailer our rocket. I learned there that happiness is made of small, stubborn acts. After she was gone, the Airstream sat for years, tucked away, waiting on a promise I didn't know I was making, to only move it when the family moved too. Ryan has always chased a stage. He likes light, focus, applause. I get it. Some people hum to the heartbeat of a room watching. I hum to the scratch of chalk on the board and the hush of 25 students who, for 1 minute, stop thinking about lunch. I always wanted Ryan to learn the difference between stage and project. The stage ends when the lights go out. A project begins when you're the one sweeping the room after everyone's gone. I did try to teach him, sometimes gently, sometimes with a bark. I didn't always get the dosage right. But what you can't say is that I didn't show up. When that no old man speeches story popped up and the crowd laughed, a particular spot hurt. The door closed without explanation. Not inviting me was a decision. I could agree or not, but turning me into a public joke, however small, was a message. A message that tripped something confetti can't command. A boundary. I made my croissant last like a man delaying a fever, and while I pressed the butter flat with a fork, I already knew where it was headed. Toward a snap you can't take back. If you think a father shouldn't do what I did, stay. I thought so too. Until that day. Have you ever felt little crumbs of disrespect piling up until they turn into a hard loaf you can't swallow? I have. On Thanksgiving, when I raised my glass to say 2 minutes about Marion, Ryan cracked a joke. Look, Dad's giving a TED Talk. And everybody laughed. I laughed too. Laughter is the oil, I've said that. But the next day I overheard him on the phone. My dad loves to be the center, kills the vibe. I heard it by accident. A few months later, Brooklyn made a comment at lunch. You get too serious, Mr. Delaney. We want lightness. I answered, lightness without respect turns into a wind that knocks things over. She didn't get it. That's okay. We don't always get each other. There was more. One Saturday, Ryan called asking for my card just to hold a deposit for a drone video project he had. I didn't lend it. I offered to sit down and look at numbers. He got offended, said he didn't need an auditor, that I had a control problem. I hung up slow without rattling the line. Then I found myself thinking about the power of attorney I'd signed before surgery. My stomach went cold. It wasn't that I thought he'd do something. I was just tired of handing out keys to someone who treated my house like a stage. The finest humiliation, though, came in public crumbs. On Instagram, a photo of the fridge I paid for captioned, "Building our home with our own hands." I dropped a heart in the comments. No reply. At Christmas, a t-shirt for me that read, "History, the subject nobody wants turning into a toast." We laughed, but the laugh had a barb. Around then, I started jotting amounts in the margin of my old notebook, the one with a sepia print of Charleston on the cover. It wasn't revenge bookkeeping. It was a way of remembering the effort. A little over $2,800 for the barber course. A little over $400 for the windshield he cracked when he tapped the back of a parked truck. Just under $1,000 for a last-minute move to a smaller apartment when he fought with his roommate and bailed with no plan. I'd look at the numbers and remember the smell of each episode. Gas station grease, the vacuum of an empty apartment, tears at a car door. Numbers that hurt isn't about money, it's about memory. Each figure was an I showed up. Meanwhile, Elise was doing other math. Double shifts at the hospital, traded overnights, gas for those drives to me at 2 in the morning when nerve pain had me whispering cuss words so I wouldn't wake the neighbors. She didn't write any of it down, but I saw it. I saw it and kept it. The climb got steeper once the pregnancy arrived. First, the balloon surprise. Then the Delaney's and Fisherman group chat blew up with messages about themes, palettes, playlists. I sent one simple text: I need the date and time so I can adjust my meds and my back. Nobody answered for 2 days. When Ryan did reply, it was curt: we'll let you know. I read it, closed the phone, and went to walk Pitt Street. The wind was good. The egrets next tents looked like teachers watching a class. I breathed and decided the next move had to be mine, not out of anger, out of teaching. At home, I regretted the generosity of that power of attorney. I'd given it because that's what you do when you feel vulnerable. But I understood that in my case, that paper had become one more key in the hand of someone who liked to nudge doors just enough to make them creak. I called Caroline, explained everything. Her silence was a stamp of understanding. We do 2 things, she said. A tight trust and revocation of the POA. You stay protected, Elise is recognized, and the grandbaby is supported. And the no contest clause frames it. Contesting on a whim turns into nothing. I don't want to punish, I said. I want to educate, even if it hurts. Education without limits turns into wind. You're putting up a wall, she said. I liked Caroline because she talked like someone placing furniture in just the right spot. The climb hit a strange summit on the No Old Man Speeches Day. When the drone flew over that footbridge, I could walk with my eyes closed and my son laughed over my head. Something settled. I'd waited for the invitation like waiting on a letter that never arrives. I'd given it time. The omission had turned into a message. And I've always told my classes that messages deserve answers. That afternoon, I bought a book for my grandchild, The Moon and the Sea, cobalt blue, with pictures that make you want to stick your finger in the paint. I wrote on the flyleaf, whoever you turn out to be from your grandpa Art, who will always say yes to your questions. It was my bit of sweetness inside a decision that would read like steel. I also asked Caroline to add a gift to the trust that felt like clean river water. My wooden boat, a 1967 Chris Craft, to the marine science program at Wando High in Marion's memory. I could already see Mr. Garcia, the marine science teacher, gripping the gunnel and saying, "This is history you can sail." And I decided finally that what I was going to pop that day wasn't a balloon. It was the silence. Little did I know that pop would echo far beyond the Pitt Street Bridge. Caroline's office had a window onto a fig tree that insisted on growing where no one gave it a chance. The light coming in propped up my "let's do it" like a hand between my back and the chair. Caroline read the trust with me line by line. When she said no contest clause, I asked her to put it in my homeroom voice. Explain it like I'd explain it to the 10th graders. Easy. If you accept, you receive. If you pick a fight to grab more, you lose what you had. It's the classroom rule: raise your hand to talk about a classmate and you lose the floor. Exactly. We said everything with calm. The Hibben Street house into the trust, my lifetime use. 60% to Elise, written for the simplest and most beautiful reason: ongoing care. 30% to a 529 college plan for the grandbaby, opened that day with $25,000 to start, with automatic deposits of $150 each month. I wanted to watch that number grow like something you water. Caroline is trustee until the kid turns 25, with clear rules: tuition, books, course costs. 10% to the teacher's fund, a reminder that my tribe isn't made of applause. It's made of showing up for work. We also included the Airstream from 75. I wanted it to be Elise's, with one simple condition: tough as a good river stone. 1 trip a year with the grandchild. Anything, a weekend in North Carolina, 2 nights in Edisto, didn't matter. It was the clause I called the Rocket Clause. She laughed when I said it. Gonna force your daughter to pack a bag? I'm going to remind her, I corrected. The condition is my way of saying time is the inheritance that doesn't depreciate. I signed the revocation of the power of attorney with the same blue pen Marion used to sign things that carried us this far. And I asked for one more thing: letters. One for Elise, naming facts and the smell of dawn. One for Ryan, no venom. written so it could be read without opening a wound with a knife. One for Brooklyn, separating confetti from respect, and a copy of the summary of trust for Ryan, not thrown like a rock but delivered as a document that says, "I thought and I signed." I walked down Broad feeling like a man who had to tuck bitter medicine into a sweet roll. I stepped into Golar and Malaclay, ordered another coffee, and watched the world pass like I was calibrating a compass. A little before noon, my phone buzzed with a message from Caroline. All recorded. "Want me to send a courier with the letters in hand?" I said yes and added, tipping into the humor that keeps me from hardening, "I'll do the hard part sweetly. When they pop their color, I'll drop mine in the chat." I washed my hands in the tiny bathroom, the one with lavender soap, and the smell brought Marion up the back of my neck. The familiar ache sat beside me like someone who knows the way home. I went up King Street, bought the blue book, wrote the dedication in teacher's hand, then swung back by Caroline's to ask her to tuck the dedication into the 529 envelope. She smiled, fixed her bun with a quick, precise move, and stamped what needed stamping. By mid-afternoon, the sun was roasting concrete. On my phone, the drone showed the channel and the marshes rippling like silk. Brooklyn counted 1, 2, 3, and the cannons shot blue smoke. A boy. The shouts rolled like a wave. In the same second, I posted in Delaney's and Fisherman. Since I wasn't invited to the reveal, here's mine. I'm revealing my will. Surprise. It's not you, Ryan. Art. I attached a 2-page PDF titled Summary of Trust, Marion and Art Delaney's today's date. In the message, I wrote it clear as a wiped blackboard. The house in trust. Elise as the major beneficiary for her care. A 529 opened with $25,150 each month. 10% to the teacher's fund. No contest clause active. POA revoked. The 1967 Chris Craft donated to Wando High's Marine Science program in memory of Marion. The 1975 Airstream to Elise with 1 trip a year with the grandchild. Love intact, wallet closed too. Disrespect. I added a photo of the county record with the stamp still wet. In the body of the message, I wrote my son a short letter. Ryan, spilled milk doesn't climb back into the jug. Words once spoken turn into nails in the doors of the heart. You left me out without saying so. You turned me into a drone joke. I won't compete for applause with confetti. I'm just taking away the power that never did you any good. My money. When you want my time, my shoulder, and my story, they're yours. Today, my will is the only balloon popping. Grandpa Art. The chat went silent. The kind of silence that hums in your pocket like it has weight. I watched the river, the line where water and sky trembled like a fevered patient. And I waited. I knew it was coming. And it came. Little did I know the noise would arrive from the edges, not the center. The first to break the silence was my brother-in-law, Pete. Art. Brave and clear. Elise, a little after. Dad, I love you. I'm coming over. Today. A cousin I hardly see. People, respect is the baseline. And then Ryan, sharp as a tack. What kind of clown show is this? You're stealing my son from me. This is immoral. You're being manipulated by that ambulance-chasing lawyer. Seriously, 0% after everything? I read the after everything twice. I could have made a list of everythings. I could have sent a snapshot of the notebook with the numbers that hurt. I could have. I didn't. I wrote, Ryan, nobody steals a child with paperwork. Your son is yours, my money isn't. I don't owe you an inheritance. And for the record, a will isn't revenge. It's organization. I'm offering a conversation on Tuesday late afternoon at Paige's Okra Grill. The confetti's up to you. He typed, erased, typed, sent. You think Brooklyn didn't read that? You humiliated her. We didn't invite you because you always turn everything into a judgment. For a second, the old urge flared. To explain, to justify, to preach. I swallowed it, replied, You uninvited me. I unobligated myself. Today I'm not judging. I'm showing, and I'm signing. I closed the app and walked up to the Pitt Street Bridge. The wind carried bits of blue confetti that stuck to the gray boards. I stood at the edge, where the water licks the pilings on moon days, and stared at the horizon until my eyes burned. A little girl in a flowered dress ran past with a helium balloon skimming the planks, laughing. I laughed too, low, because laughing is how we remember life doesn't bend entirely to our scripts. Later, Brooklyn called. I picked up because her voice has never been mean, just hurried. "Mr. Delaney," she began, soft, a little frayed from crying. "I didn't agree with Ryan about excluding you. He thought you'd bring tension. I was wrong not to put my foot down. I'm sorry." "Thank you for saying so," I answered, slow. "I don't want to be where I'm not welcome, but I do want to be where I'm a grandfather." "You are," she sniffed. "And congratulations. It's a boy. Congratulations to you too." I took a breath. What I did today wasn't against you, it was for me, and for my grandson, who's going to have a grandpa with a backbone. The silence that followed didn't hurt. It was the kind of quiet people think in. "I'll be at Page's on Tuesday," she said at last. "With Ryan, we need to talk, no drone." "No drone," I said, and smiled to myself in the kitchen. The next morning, Caroline's courier delivered the letters by hand. I knew because Tessa, driving by, saw the brown envelope land on Ryan's porch and described it with the humor of someone born into a dramatic family. "Looked like a movie scene, Uncle." I replied, "Copy that," and went back to my rocker. By Tuesday, the town had done what small towns do with a story, stirred the pot. In the neighborhood group, someone commented about controlling old men. In Mount Pleasant Mamas, a thread popped up, deleted 2 hours later, about boundaries with grandparents. I didn't answer, didn't read, didn't go looking. The street of my life is more concrete. Elise showing up with Brown's Court cookies, hugging me till my bones popped. "Dad, you did the right thing. And you did it beautifully. Ink straight, lines clean," she said, settling on the porch. I told her everything. Caroline, the trust, the boat for the school. Elise cried when I mentioned the Airstream. "Mom called it the rocket," she laughed, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "It'll be our rocket, with one annoying clause. 1 trip a year with the little one. Deal." On Tuesday, I got to Page's Okra Grill early with Elise. I ordered sweet tea and fried chicken with hot sauce. The room smelled like clean oil and good laughter. The waiter, who calls me Mr. D, touched the edge of the table the way you rest a hand on a post. Silent respect. Ryan and Brooklyn came in a few minutes later. He was pale, shoulders low, hand at his wife's waist like an anchor. They sat. For a minute, no one spoke. The clink of flatware ran like a river behind us. "Dad," he began, swallowing hard, "I hurt you. I thought I was protecting you from becoming the topic. I became the topic. He stared at the tabletop. "I ran. I was scared you'd run the show, take the stage from me. I have a problem with the stage, okay? I want applause. I always have. And when it doesn't come, I turn into a kid. I'm sorry." The words fell like loose screws into a coffee can. Noise but relief. I didn't sermonize. I spoke like a man easing a knot without snapping the string. "You don't need my will. You need a project. The stage is too small for a whole life. I won't give you money. I'll give you coffee every Tuesday and the question my students hated and thank me for now. What are you going to do with what you've got? What you've got is a baby on the way and 2 hands. And a dad who's up for coffee," he said, almost laughing. "And a mother-in-law in training," Brooklyn nudged, reaching for lightness. "I want my boy to have a grandpa. No drone, short speech." "Short," I promised. 2 minutes and I'm done." "1.5 minutes, Elise cut in with the smile that holds a family together. Did we stumble after that? We did. Friday, Ryan sent a long voice note saying I'd put on a show. I almost replied with an email citing clauses, deleted it, called instead, listened. The show, he said, had been his life up to now, one entrance after another without a play, and he was unlearning. I said only, "Tuesday, late afternoon, bring a notebook," and wrote in mine, "Teaching is patience wearing a weekly schedule." 2 months went by the way wind goes over a sail. Before and after, I kept funding the 529. The balance nudged up to about 25,450. Those automatic 150 deposits made me grin like a kid with a piggy bank and a shiny coin. The Chris craft was delivered to Wando High. I watched Mr. Garcia's eyes shine like a new harbor light as I laid a hand on the hull and said, "Her name now is Marion." The school put out a simple, lovely note, and I filled my chest without making a speech. Sometimes a man who lives by lectures has to learn to keep quiet. At the baby shower, we threw on Mathis Ferry Road in Elise's backyard. We strung blankets on lines, filled jars with lemonade, bought a 2-layer cake with strawberries and cream. I spoke for a minute and a half, timed by looks. I told them about the day Marion made me promise I'd keep my spine, and how love, when it grows a spine, sometimes hurts, but it keeps you standing. At the end, I handed Ryan an envelope. Inside, a copy of the trust summary, this time with one extra line in my hand. "When your son is born, I'll be there, not for the confetti, for him." Dad. He didn't cry. Not his way. But his chin stopped shaking. I thought the storm had passed. Little did I know people are like tides, coming and going, and every return asks for the same lesson again. The boy was born on a morning of clear sky, and the wind off Shem Creek brought one of those scents that mix salt, mud, and promise. I was in a MUSC hallway with a lukewarm coffee when Ryan came out of the room, mask crooked on his face, eyes red from not sleeping. He saw me, hesitated, then walked straight in, hugged me. "Dad, it was God," he said, voice breaking where it never breaks. I've always been better with dates than with deities, so I answered my way. "A miracle with a scalpel." He laughed through hiccups, and I rhymed with his laugh. "Go on, your life just changed." I held my grandson in my left arm, the watch arm, the one that knows how to time a class and wait for the bell. His face looked like the map of a country you somehow already know without ever having been. I whispered a piece of the blue book in his ear. "The moon tugs on the sea, and I move you just by thinking." The nurse glanced over her mask, and I saw her eyes smile. Elise, on shift in another wing, found a way to zip by, pinched my shoulder. Sappy Grandpa. In the days that followed, the world shifted to a different rotation. Ryan and I met on Tuesdays with coffee and a notebook. Not therapy, conversation. Sometimes half an hour of silence watching the marsh. Sometimes a ping-pong of short lines. "How are the bills?" I'd ask. "In order," he'd say, showing me a simple budget with figures that hurt for what they meant. About $1,300 and change for rent, just under $300 for utilities, around $200 for diapers, roughly 60-something in subscriptions he canceled. That 60-something Dad was bread. And the project? I'm filming boats for brokerages. No stage, lots of work. About $350 a video. I closed 3 this week. And the stage? "The stage is the crib now," he'd answer, and I let that swell of pride sit without fanfare. Brooklyn sent me photos of the boy with confetti specks of late afternoon light on his cheeks. I started liking sun confetti. The 529 kept hitting numbers that made me smile under my breath. 26,000, then 26,450, then 27, and change. I wasn't buying anyone's love. I was keeping a kind of promise. Laying down the track I know how to lay. Education. There were dips, sure. One Saturday, Ryan called rattled because a client had canceled 2 videos. The old voice rose in him. "It's all against me. Nothing works." I listened to the end, then said, "Today's lesson is perseverance. Get over here. We're going to write the script for the next video, and you're calling 5 brokers with a practiced pitch. Today." He balked, came anyway, practiced, called, closed 2. It wasn't cinema. It was life. There were folks who didn't like my way, too. A distant aunt wrote on a family Facebook thread that I'd humiliated him in public. I'd already decided not to wrestle in the town square. I didn't respond. Elise did. She wrote, "A boundary isn't humiliation. It's a spine. Our dad held up ours plenty of times. He's holding his now." Silence followed. A quieter silence, more groan. The boat, Marion, Took her first run with the marine science students on a Saturday with a short breeze. I went down to the marina and watched teenagers clamber aboard with floppy notebooks, the air smelling of cheap sunscreen. Mr. Garcia introduced me. "This is Mr. Delaney. Thank him. Eyes up." They thanked me sweetly, awkwardly. I didn't give a speech. I said only, "Take care of what teaches you." The engine purred like a cat fed on time, and I felt Marion sit on the bench beside me. I rang the ship's bell in my head and closed my eyes. The Airstream, our rocket, finally rolled out of the yard with Elise at the wheel, the baby in his car seat, me riding shotgun with maps and sandwiches. We went to Hunting Island, where pine and ocean make a cure even for a stubborn grandpa. We set a simple table, turned our chairs toward the moonrise, and I taught my grandson to watch the tide come in like a book you read without hurry. The rocket clause wasn't a weight, it was a guide light. After each trip, I wrote in the notebook, Trip 1, smell of pine. Trip 2, rain on aluminum roof. Trip 3, gummy grin. When the boy was a few months old and his parents' sleep had climbed back to "we're surviving," I invited the family for a small dinner on my porch. 2 platters, shrimp and grits, butter beans, sweet tea, cornbread. I rang the ship's bell, and the sound ran down Hibben Street like family calling each other by name. I spoke for a minute, short. I didn't list facts. I said the morale. On confetti night, I revealed my will. I thought I was popping a hard balloon. What burst was a silence that made me small at my own table. From then on, I followed your mother Marion's line. Don't give up your place at the table. A boundary is the key. The will was just the lock. Ryan lifted his glass of tea. He looked at me in a way he never had, not as a son asking, but as a man who understood that a father's dignity is the roof that throws shade. "Dad," he said, "I asked your forgiveness that day. Today I'm asking again, but not as a plea, as recognition. Thank you for telling me no. If you'd given, I would have kept asking. I took it from the wrong place and put it in the right one," I said. "Out of your pocket and into your calendar. Tuesday, coffee, the rest is yours." Brooklyn, born for spotlights and now in love with lamplight, raised her hand like a student asking to speak. "Mr. Delaney, I want to apologize too. I'm a party girl. Glitter in my veins. I thought sparkle could stand in for foundation. I was wrong. You gave me a foundation. Thank you." "Thank you," I said. I don't hate confetti. I hate doors that close without a word. Doors can close to protect what's inside, but they should always open for a right knock. We raised glasses of tea the way you lift candles in church. Time passed the way it should. Days of grease and birdsong. My grandson crawled with the same urgency Ryan had at 11 to jump in the skiff. Every Tuesday, a table at Page's waited for us, a seat we no longer needed to request. I'd bring a theme. Budget, routine, kindness, apologizing, texting at the right time, saying no without shouting. Ryan brought effort. Sometimes the talk turned into a quick ping pong. Streaming subscription, keep or cut. Cut and use the county library. Buy a new drone, about $1,200, or service the old one for around $260. Service it now. New drone when 3 jobs pay for it. Post a look at me clip or a client case. Client. Applause from the one who pays is more honest than heart icons. We laughed at ourselves. And when we couldn't laugh, the porch light did the job. One afternoon, months later, I got the 529 statement, about $28,450. I printed it and stapled it to the inside cover of the boys' blue book. I ran my finger over that staple like checking the set of a nail, and I thought of Marion's line. The table is where you put food, talk, and boundary. And yes, where you raise a glass. I rang the ship's bell again just to rehearse the humanness of the sound. If you've stayed with me this far, I'll tell you what I wish I'd heard sooner. A boundary isn't set by yelling. It's set by writing, signing, and repeating, calmly. My will was a document, but it was also a lesson. It didn't cost me a son. It gave me my spine back. And in a world that confuses stage with project, that's surprise enough. Some called me cold, some applauded, some side-eyed. I kept being who I am. A history teacher, Marion's widower, Elise and Ryan's dad. Grandpa to a boy who smells like talc and tomorrow. I still see sometimes a scrap of blue confetti caught in the grass at the Pitt Street Pocket Park, flashing quick when the wind decides to play. I smile. I don't hate confetti. I hate uninvites. That's why I opened my door, with a key. The key is called boundary. And that afternoon when I wasn't invited to the reveal, I revealed what needed saying. Surprise, it isn't you, it's my dignity. And if you think a father can only teach with a hug, I'll say this. Sometimes the lesson that saves arrives with a firm chair, a set table, and a notebook open. That's how my family relearned how to sit. That's how we toasted, not to confetti, but to freedom. Theirs to choose, mine to stand up straight, and my grandsons to grow up knowing real love isn't bought with applause or sold for zero. You learn it, you practice it. Tuesday, coffee, and a toast please to the kind of surprise that helps people grow. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about the story in the comments. See you in the next one.